My HOA didn't send a warning. They showed up at my house and started tearing it apart. What they didn't know. I was ready for them. The morning the HOA showed up at my house started like any other quiet. Calm and completely normal. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee when I heard aggressive knocking that rattled the front door. Not a polite tap. Not a neighborly ring. This was the kind of knock that screamed, "We think we own this place." When I opened the door, there she was, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, flanked by 2 board members and a guy holding a clipboard like it was a badge. She didn't greet me. Didn't smile. Didn't even pretend to be civil. Instead, she shoved a stack of papers toward my chest and announced, "We're reconducting an emergency compliance inspection." Emergency. At 8:12 in the morning. According to her, someone had reported serious violations, visible from the street. I glanced behind me at my perfectly trimmed lawn, freshly painted shutters, and spotless driveway. The only violation I could think of was that I didn't attend their last HOA bake sale. I calmly asked for prior notice documentation, which our bylaws clearly require. Karen rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "We don't need your permission," she snapped. "The HOA has authority." Authority over what? My coffee temperature. Before I could respond, one of the board members started taking photos of my porch like he was documenting a crime scene. Karen stepped forward, trying to peer past me into my living room. When I realized this wasn't about compliance. This was about control. And they had picked the wrong house to test that theory on. Karen didn't wait for an invitation. The moment I stepped slightly outside to block the doorway, she leaned in closer and lowered her voice like she was delivering a royal decree. "As president of this HOA, I have the right to inspect any property within the community if there's reasonable suspicion of violations." Reasonable suspicion. I asked her what exactly I was being accused of. She shuffled her papers dramatically and began listing vague complaints, unauthorized exterior modifications, possible unregistered landscaping changes, and my personal favorite, suspicious storage visibility. Suspicious storage visibility. Apparently, a covered grill and 2 neatly stacked storage bins on my own patio were now neighborhood threats. I asked her to point out where in the bylaws it allowed her to enter my home without notice. She flipped through pages but avoided answering directly. Instead, she kept repeating, "We've received multiple complaints." Multiple? From who? The same 3 people who think beige is a personality trait. When I didn't immediately comply, her tone shifted. She straightened her blazer, adjusted her oversized sunglasses, and said, "If you refuse cooperation, we can escalate this." Escalate? Over patio furniture. One of the board members chimed in, claiming they needed to verify interior compliance to ensure I hadn't made structural changes without approval. That's when it clicked. They weren't just fishing. They were hoping I'd feel intimidated enough to let them walk right in. I calmly reminded them that my home is private property, and unless they had a court order, no one was stepping inside. Karen's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to resistance. She was used to nervous homeowners folding under pressure. But I didn't budge. And that's when I saw it in her eyes the moment she decided this was about winning. Not rules. What happened next still feels unreal when I replay it in my head. The moment I told Karen she wasn't coming inside without proper legal documentation. Her patience snapped. She stepped back, whispered something to the board members, and suddenly the tone shifted from inspection to intimidation. One of them claimed they had the right to document exterior violations from all visible angles. Before I could respond, they spread out across my yard like they were executing a search warrant. The man with the clipboard started pulling at the tarp covering my grill. Another board member began measuring the distance between my fence posts, muttering about non-standard spacing. Karen marched straight toward my flower beds and began yanking out small decorative solar lights, insisting they were approved fixtures. I stood there stunned as she tossed them onto my driveway like confiscated contraband. I told them to stop. Loudly. I warned them they were damaging private property. Karen didn't even look at me. Non-compliant items may be subject to removal, she said coldly, as if she rehearsed the line in a mirror. One of them knocked over a ceramic planter while trying to photograph the siding. It shattered across the walkway. When my calm disappeared. I stepped forward and demanded they leave immediately. Instead, Karen pulled out her phone and announced she was documenting my aggressive behavior. Aggressive? They were the ones tearing through my yard. Neighbors had started peeking through curtains. The spectacle was exactly what she wanted: public pressure, embarrassment, control. But what she didn't realize was that every second of their little raid was being captured by my security cameras. And unlike Karen's authority, those cameras were very real. What Karen didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't just some random homeowner they could bully into submission. I had spent years working in property law before changing careers, and I knew HOA bylaws better than most board members ever would. While they were busy trampling my yard and pretending to enforce imaginary rules, I was mentally cataloging every violation they were committing. I calmly stepped back inside, not to retreat but to prepare. From my phone, I pulled up the community's governing documents, highlighting the exact section that required 48-hour written notice for inspections. No exceptions. I also bookmarked the clause clearly stating the HOA had no authority to remove or alter personal property without a court order. Every solar light Karen had tossed, that was unauthorized removal. Every planter broken, property damage. Then I opened my security app. Multiple camera angles had captured everything. Karen entering my yard without consent. The board member tugging at my grill cover. The moment the ceramic planter shattered. Crystal clear. Time stamped. Audio included. When I stepped back outside, they were still pacing around like they owned the place. Karen looked surprised to see me so calm. She probably expected yelling. Maybe even panic. Instead, I simply informed them that they were now trespassing and that all further communication would go through my attorney. That word attorney hit differently. One of the board members froze. Another lowered his clipboard. Karen tried to maintain composure, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty. They thought they were flexing power. They didn't realize they had just handed me a legal case wrapped in HD footage. They picked the wrong homeowner because I wasn't afraid of them. I was prepared for them. Karen tried to recover the moment I mentioned my attorney. She straightened her posture, forced a tight smile, and claimed this was all just a routine enforcement misunderstanding. But the damage had already been done literally and legally. Within 24 hours, my lawyer had drafted a formal demand letter outlining trespass, destruction of property, harassment, and violation of the HOA's own governing documents. Attached were still images pulled directly from my security footage. The tone of the neighborhood shifted fast. Suddenly, the HOA board wasn't sending warning notices anymore, they were sending apologies. Quiet ones, private ones. But it didn't stop there. My attorney also requested access to HOA financial records and enforcement history. And what we found was eye-opening. Selective enforcement, targeted fines, emergency inspections that somehow only applied to homeowners who had previously questioned the board's decisions. Karen's authority wasn't just overstepping, it was legally reckless. When the formal complaint was filed, the HOA's insurance carrier got involved. That's when panic truly set in. Board members began distancing themselves from Karen's initiative. One even claimed he felt pressured to participate. Funny how courage disappears when legal paperwork shows up. The settlement discussions didn't take long. The HOA agreed to cover all damages, issue a formal written apology, revise inspection policies, and most importantly, Karen resigned as president within weeks. Officially, it was for personal reasons. Unofficially, accountability finally caught up. Neighbors who had once stayed silent started knocking on my door, not with complaints, but with stories. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who had been targeted. Karen thought she was raiding a house. Instead, she triggered the collapse of her own power trip. And just like that, the HOA learned a very expensive lesson. If you love HOA drama and watching Karens get exposed, hit subscribe and turn on notifications bell. You don't want to miss the next meltdown.